Jake had always been the type of guy who kept his thoughts to himself. As a 24-year-old graduate student studying the human brain, he spent most of his time buried in books and research papers. His friends often joked that he was more comfortable with lab equipment than people, and honestly, they weren't wrong. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday morning when Professor Williams announced a new research project. The university had received funding to study how the brain processes emotions, and they needed 2 students to work together on the experimental setup. Jake raised his hand, hoping to get paired with someone quiet who wouldn't disturb his focused work style. That's when he met Lisa. She walked into the lab like she owned the place. Her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a faded university sweatshirt and jeans. There was something about her that immediately caught Jake's attention, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. Maybe it was the way she moved with such confidence, or how her eyes seemed to take in every detail of the room at once. "You must be Jake," she said, extending her hand with a warm smile. "I'm Lisa. Looks like we're going to be lab partners." Jake shook her hand, trying to ignore the small flutter in his chest. He had always been awkward around attractive women, and Lisa definitely fell into that category. As they began setting up the brain monitoring equipment, Jake found himself stealing glances at her while trying to focus on the technical manual. What struck him as odd was how Lisa seemed to know exactly what he was thinking before he said it. When he was about to ask for a specific cable, she would hand it to him. When he was struggling with a difficult connection, she would offer help before he even looked frustrated. At first, Jake chalked it up to her being really good at reading body language. "You know," Lisa said during their first week of working together, "you don't have to be so nervous around me. I'm just a regular person." Jake nearly dropped the electrode he was holding. He hadn't said anything about being nervous, and he thought he was doing a decent job of hiding it. "I'm not nervous," he replied, though his voice came out higher than usual. Lisa just smiled and continued calibrating the equipment. "Sure, okay. But just so you know, I think you're pretty cool too." Jake's heart stopped. He had been thinking about how impressive and cool Lisa seemed, but he was absolutely certain he hadn't said that out loud. He replayed the last few minutes, in his head trying to figure out if he had somehow voiced his thoughts without realizing it. As the days went on, these strange moments kept happening. During lunch breaks, Lisa would comment on things that seemed to respond directly to his private thoughts. When Jake was thinking about how the cafeteria food reminded him of his grandmother's cooking, Lisa would suddenly start talking about family recipes. When he was internally debating whether to suggest they work late to finish a section, she would bring up staying late before he could. The most unsettling moment came during their second week.
Ow!
Jake was having trouble concentrating, because he kept thinking about how Lisa's perfume smelled like vanilla and how it was distracting him from their work. He was feeling embarrassed about these thoughts, knowing they were unprofessional, when Lisa suddenly looked up from her computer. "Jake, do you want me to sit further away? I know my perfume can be strong sometimes." Jake stared at her, his mouth slightly open. There was no way she could have known what he was thinking. No way at all. Unless... "How did you know I was thinking about your perfume?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lisa's face went pale. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. I didn't. I just noticed you seemed distracted and thought maybe..." But Jake wasn't buying it anymore. Too many coincidences had piled up, and his scientific mind was starting to connect the dots. "Lisa, there's something you're not telling me? This has been happening all week. You respond to things I'm thinking, but haven't said." Lisa stood up, abruptly knocking over her coffee cup. The brown liquid spread across the lab table, soaking into their research notes. "I should go," she said, grabbing her bag. "We can work on this tomorrow." That night, Jake couldn't sleep, kept running through every interaction he'd had with Lisa, analyzing each moment where she seemed to know more than she should. The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that something extraordinary was happening. The next day, Lisa arrived at the lab looking tired, as if she hadn't slept either. They worked in uncomfortable silence for most of the morning, both of them stealing glances at each other when they thought the other wasn't looking. Finally, around noon, Jake couldn't take it anymore. "Lisa, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Lisa stopped typing and looked at him with resignation in her eyes. "I know what you're going to ask. Do you really? 'Cause I'm thinking it right now, and if you can tell me what it is." "You want to know if I can read your mind?" Lisa said quietly, not breaking eye contact. Jake felt the world tilt slightly. Hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way that terrified him. "Can you?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment, her fingers playing with the edge of her notebook. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "Yes, I can. And Jake, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to invade your privacy like this." The lab fell silent, except for the humming of the computers. Jake felt like he was in a dream, or maybe a nightmare. Everything he had believed about reality had just been turned upside down.
Ow.
"Long?" he managed to ask. "Since the day we met? Since the moment I shook your hand?" Lisa's voice was barely audible. "I've been trying to control it, trying to pretend it wasn't happening, but it's gotten stronger every day we spend together." Jake thought about every moment they'd shared, every private thought he'd had while sitting across from her. His attraction to her, his insecurities about his research, his worries about his family, his embarrassing memories from childhood. Everything had been laid bare to her, and she had said nothing. "So you know everything," he said, his voice hollow. "Every stupid thought, every embarrassing moment, every ... Every time you thought I was beautiful. Every time you wondered if I might like you back. Every time you worried you weren't smart enough to be working on this project." Lisa's voice was gentle but firm. "Yes, Jake. I know all of it, and I'm still here." Jake buried his face in his hands. The humiliation was overwhelming. Felt exposed and vulnerable in a way he had never experienced before. But underneath the embarrassment, there was something else. A strange sense of relief that someone finally knew everything about him, even the parts he tried to hide from himself. "Now need some time to think about this," he said, standing up on shaky legs. Lisa nodded. Understanding in her eyes, "I'll be here when you're ready to talk. And Jake, for what it's worth, I think your thoughts are beautiful. All of them." As Jake walked out of the lab, his mind was spinning with questions, fears, and possibilities. Nothing would ever be the same again, but maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Jake didn't sleep for 3 days straight. Every time he closed his eyes, he would remember another embarrassing moment from the past 2 weeks. The time he thought about how Lisa's laugh was cute and wondered what it would be like to make her laugh more often. The moment he imagined what it might feel like to hold her hand. The afternoon, when he caught himself staring at her and thinking about how pretty she looked when she was focused on her work. All of it. She had heard all of it. He started avoiding the lab, sending Lisa texts about being sick or having other commitments. But even when he was alone in his apartment, he couldn't stop his mind from racing. What else had she heard? What about the time he wondered if she had a boyfriend? Or when he felt jealous because Professor Williams seemed to praise her work more than his? The worst part was that he couldn't control his thoughts now that he knew she could hear them. It was like trying not to think about a pink elephant. Harder he tried to push certain thoughts away, the louder they became in his head. He found himself having entire conversations with her in his mind, then panicking about whether she could somehow hear those two, even when she wasn't around. By Thursday, Jake was a mess. He had dark circles under his eyes. His hair was uncombed, and he had been living on coffee and instant noodles. His roommate Tom kept asking if he was okay, but Jake couldn't exactly explain that his lab partner could read his mind. "Dude, you look terrible," Tom said, sitting down on the couch next to him. "What's going on? Is it about that girl you've been working with, Lisa?" Jake nearly choked on his coffee. "Why would you think it's about her?" "Because you've been talking about her nonstop for weeks, and now suddenly you won't even mention her name. Plus, you're acting like someone who just got his heart broken." Jake realized Tom was right. He had been talking about Lisa constantly, sharing little stories about their conversations and how smart she was. Now the silence felt heavy and obvious. "Complicated," Jake said, which was the understatement of the century. Meanwhile, Lisa was dealing with her own struggles. She had been sitting in the empty lab every day, hoping Jake would show up. He didn't. She tried to focus on their research alone, but everything reminded her of him. The way he would bite his lip when he was concentrating. How he would get excited when he figured out a difficult problem. The gentle way he handled the sensitive equipment. She had never meant for things to get this complicated. The mind-reading thing had started 6 months ago during her previous research project. She had been working with experimental brain stimulation technology, trying to understand how the brain processes emotional information. Something had gone wrong during one of the tests, and afterward, she started picking up on other people's thoughts and feelings. At first, it was overwhelming. Walking across campus became torture because she could hear fragments of everyone's internal conversations. She learned to avoid crowded places and spent most of her time alone, trying to figure out how to make it stop. When she met Jake, something was different. His thoughts weren't just noise like everyone else's. They were clear and genuine and kind. Even his worries and insecurities were endearing because they showed how much he cared about doing good work and being a good person. For the first time in months, Lisa had enjoyed being around someone. Jake's thoughts were like a warm, comfortable conversation, even when he wasn't speaking out loud. She found herself looking forward to their lab sessions, not just because she liked him, but because his mind was a peaceful place to be. But now she had ruined everything by being honest with him. On Friday morning, Lisa couldn't take it anymore. She walked to Jake's apartment, having gotten his address from the university directory. She stood outside his door for 10 minutes, gathering courage, before finally knocking. Jake answered the door, looking surprised and slightly panicked. "Lisa, how did you find my address, Jake? We need to talk. I know you're avoiding me, and I understand why, but there are things you need to know." Jake hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. His apartment was messier than usual, with textbooks scattered everywhere and empty coffee cups on every surface. "I know what you're thinking," Lisa said, then caught herself. I can guess what you're thinking. You feel like I've been spying on you, like I've seen parts of you that you never chose to share." Jake sat down heavily on his couch, "Haven't you?" "Yes, but Jake, you need to understand something. I never asked for this ability. I didn't choose to hear your thoughts. It just happened, and I've been trying to figure out how to live with it ever since." Lisa sat down across from him, careful to keep some distance. "Do you want to know what it's like? Really know?" Jake nodded reluctantly. "Imagine walking into a room where 100 people are all talking at once, and you can't turn down the volume. Every insecurity, every worry, every mean thought about their friends or family. That's what most people's minds sound like to me. It's chaos and noise, and mostly pretty ugly stuff." She took a deep breath. "But your mind is different. Your thoughts are organized and thoughtful. Even when you're worried about something, you think about it in a way that's trying to solve the problem or understand it better. And yes, you think I'm attractive, but you also think about whether I'm comfortable, whether I'm enjoying our conversations, whether you're being respectful. Most guys don't think about those things." Jake looked up at her, surprised. "Really? Really?" "Jake, I've been inside a lot of people's heads these past few months, and most of them are not as kind as you are. Not even close. But you know everything about me. Every stupid thought, every embarrassing moment." Lisa smiled sadly. "I know that you worry about your little sister starting college because you want her to be safe. I know that you still feel bad about not visiting your grandmother more before she passed away. I know that you're scared you're not smart enough to succeed in graduate school, even though you're one of the brightest people I've ever met." Jake felt tears forming in his eyes. Those were some of his deepest, most private fears. "I know all of that," Lisa continued, "and it makes me care about you more, not less. Jake, most people spend their whole lives hiding their real selves from each other. But I've seen who you really are, and you're a good person. You're worthy of love and respect, including from yourself." They sat in silence for a moment, both of them processing the weight of what she had said. "I'm scared, Lisa," Jake finally admitted. "I'm scared of being known this completely. I'm scared of not being able to hide my flaws anymore." "No," Lisa said gently, "but hiding from me won't make this go away. And Jake, your flaws aren't nearly as terrible as you think they are. They're just part of being human." Jake looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since learning about her ability. "What happens now?" "Now we figure out how to deal with This together, if you want to, that is. I understand if it's too much. Jake thought about it. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something else. Relief, maybe, or curiosity about what it might be like to be truly known by someone who still chose to care about him. I think I'd like to try, he said quietly. Lisa smiled, and for the first time in days, Jake felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. Over the next few weeks, Jake and Lisa tried to find a new normal. They returned to their lab work, but everything felt different now. Jake was constantly aware of his thoughts, trying to monitor what he was thinking about. It was exhausting, like trying to watch yourself breathe. Lisa noticed his struggle immediately. "You're thinking so loud right now?" she said one afternoon, looking up from her computer screen. "It's like you're shouting your thoughts at me." "I'm trying not to think about anything embarrassing," Jake admitted, rubbing his temples. "But that's exactly what's making it worse. When you try to control your thoughts, they become more intense. It's like you're highlighting everything you don't want me to hear." Jake slumped in his chair. "So what am I supposed to do?" "Just think whatever I want." Lisa saved her work and turned to face him completely. "Jake, I want to show you something, but I need you to trust me. Okay?" She stood up and walked over to his workstation. "Give me your hands." Jake hesitated, then placed his hands in hers. The moment their skin touched, he felt something shift in his mind. It was like a door opening, or maybe like stepping into a warm room after being outside in the cold. "What are you doing?" he asked, but his voice sounded distant even to himself. "I'm showing you how I experience your thoughts," Lisa said softly. "Not just the surface stuff, but the deeper patterns. It's the real you." Suddenly, Jake could feel what Lisa felt when she was inside his mind. It wasn't invasive or violent like he had imagined. Instead, it was like she was sitting in a comfortable library, browsing through books that told the story of who he was. He could sense her moving through his memories, but not in a scary way. She lingered on moments that showed his kindness. The time in high school when he stood up for a kid who was being bullied, even though it made him unpopular. The way he always called his mom on Sundays, even when he was stressed about schoolwork. How he left encouraging notes for his roommate during finals week. "Do you feel that?" Lisa asked, her voice echoing strangely in his mind. "That's what I see when I look at your thoughts. Not the embarrassing stuff you're worried about, but the core of who you are." Jake felt tears running down his cheeks. Had spent so many years focusing on his mistakes and failures that he had forgotten about the good things. Through Lisa's perception, he could see himself as someone worthy of love and respect. "But what about all the other stuff?" he asked. "The selfish thoughts, the moments when I'm jealous or angry or ... Everyone has those thoughts, Jake. The difference is what you do with them. You feel jealous sometimes, but you don't act on it. In hurtful ways, get angry, but you try to understand why and fix the problem. You're not perfect, but you're trying to be good. That's what matters." Lisa gently withdrew from his mind, and Jake felt the connection fade. He blinked, looking around the lab as if seeing it for the first time. "How long have you been carrying this alone?" he asked. Lisa sat back down, suddenly looking very tired. "Since the accident 6 months ago. I was testing some new brain stimulation equipment, and something went wrong. When I woke up in the hospital, I could hear the nurse thinking. About her lunch plans? I thought I was going crazy. Have you told anyone else? My doctor thinks I have anxiety and gave me medication that doesn't work. My friends think I'm just really good at reading people. You're the first person I've told the truth to." Jake felt a wave of protectiveness wash over him. Lisa had been dealing with this incredible burden all alone, and instead of using her ability to manipulate people or gain advantages, she'd been trying to help him feel better about himself. "What's it like with other people?" he asked. Lisa grimaced. "Honestly, most people's thoughts are pretty ugly. They think mean things about their friends, they judge strangers, they're constantly worried about themselves. It's made me realize how much people lie to each other and to themselves. Not me, not you. Thoughts are honest, even when they're uncomfortable. When you think something mean about someone, you immediately feel bad about it and try to understand why you thought it. When you're scared or insecure, you don't try to make yourself feel better by putting others down." Jake thought about this. Is that why you like me? 'Cause my thoughts are ... cleaner? Lisa laughed, the first genuine laugh he had heard from her in weeks. I like you because you're you, Jake. The mind-reading thing just means I get to see all of you, not just the parts you choose to show me. And all of you is pretty wonderful. That weekend, Jake went home to visit his family. His parents lived about 2 hours away, and he hadn't seen them in months. As he sat in his childhood bedroom, he found himself thinking about Lisa constantly. But for the first time, he wasn't worried about what she might hear if she were there. He thought about how brave she had been to tell him the truth. How lonely she must have felt, carrying this secret. She had used her ability to make him feel better about himself, instead of taking advantage of knowing his weaknesses. When he returned to school on Monday, he found Lisa in the lab, looking more relaxed than he had seen her in weeks. How was your weekend? She asked. Good, I spent a lot of time thinking about us, about this situation. Lisa tensed slightly. And I realized something. You've seen the worst parts of me, and you're still here. Most people spend their whole lives wondering if they're really lovable, if people would still care about them if they knew everything. I don't have to wonder about that anymore. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. Jake, I'm not saying it's not scary. It is, but maybe being scared isn't always a bad thing. Maybe it just means something matters enough to be worth the risk. So what does this mean for us? Jake took her hands in his, the same way she had done in the lab. It means I want to learn how to be in a relationship with someone who really knows me. All of me, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Lisa
squeezed his hands. Are you sure? Because once we go down this path, there's no going back to pretending this isn't real. Jake looked into her eyes and saw his own reflection there. For the first time in his life, he felt completely seen and completely accepted at the same time. I'm sure, he said. I want to be with someone who loves me for who I really am, not who I'm pretending to be. Lisa smiled, and Jake felt something shift between them. It wasn't the end of their challenges, but it was the beginning of something deeper and more real than either of them had ever experienced before. Okay, she said. Let's figure this out together. As they sat there holding hands in the quiet, Lab Jake realized that being truly known wasn't the terrifying thing he had imagined.
Oh.
It was actually the most freeing feeling in the world. 2 months into their new understanding, Jake started seeing a counselor. Not because anything was wrong, but because he wanted to understand himself better. Dr. Rodriguez was a kind woman in her 50s, specialized in helping people with anxiety and self-acceptance issues. I've been thinking a lot about shame lately, Jake told her during one of their sessions. About how we hide parts of ourselves because we think they're unlovable. That's very insightful, Dr. Rodriguez said. What brought this on? Jake couldn't exactly tell her about Lisa's mind-reading abilities, so he kept it general. I'm in a relationship with someone who accepts me completely, flaws and all. It's made me realize how much energy I used to spend trying to be perfect. And how does that feel? It's terrifying and amazing at the same time. It's like I can finally breathe, but I'm also scared I'll mess it up somehow. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. Self-acceptance is one of the hardest things we can learn. We're often our own worst critics. Meanwhile, Lisa was facing her own challenges. The mind-reading ability that had brought her and Jake together was becoming harder to control. What started as hearing thoughts when she touched someone had evolved into constant background noise from everyone around her. Walking across campus became overwhelming. She could hear fragments of conversations from students' minds, professors, worrying about their research, cafeteria workers thinking about their families. It was like living in a crowded room where everyone was talking at once. The worst part was that she couldn't turn it off anymore. Even when she was alone, she sometimes picked up thoughts from people in nearby apartments or passing by outside. She started having headaches, trouble sleeping, moments where she felt completely disconnected from her own thoughts. One evening, she and Jake were studying together in her apartment. Everything came to a head. Lisa suddenly grabbed her head and cried out in pain. What's wrong? Jake asked, immediately moving to her side. Too many voices, Lisa gasped. I can hear everyone. The couple upstairs arguing about money, the guy next door worried about his job interviews, someone down the hall missing their ex-girlfriend. It's all so loud. Jake had never seen Lisa like this before. Her face was pale, and she was shaking. "What can I do? How can I help?" "I don't know," Lisa whispered. "It's never been this bad before." Jake helped her to the couch and sat beside her, taking her hands in his. "Focus on my voice," he said calmly. "Just my voice. Block out everything else." Lisa closed her eyes and tried to concentrate on Jake's thoughts instead of the chaos around them. His mind was like a peaceful harbor in a storm, calm, steady, and focused entirely on helping her feel better. "That's it," Jake said softly. "Just stay with me." Gradually, Lisa's breathing returned to normal, and the overwhelming flood of thoughts faded to a manageable level. But Jake could see that this was becoming a serious problem. "Lisa, we need to get you help. This is getting dangerous." "I supposed to tell?" "Hey, Doc, I can read minds and it's driving me crazy. They'll think I'm having a mental breakdown." Jake thought about this. What if we found someone who specializes in unusual neurological conditions? Someone who might be open to the possibility that your brain surgery changed something. The next day, Jake spent hours researching neurologists who studied experimental brain treatments. He found Dr. Kim, a researcher at the university hospital who had written papers about unexpected side effects from brain stimulation therapy. It took 3 weeks to get an appointment. And Lisa was nervous about telling another person her secret. But Dr. Kim surprised them both by listening carefully and asking detailed questions about when the ability started and how it had changed over time. "I've seen a few cases like this," Dr. Kim said, making notes. "The brain is incredibly adaptable, and sometimes when we stimulate certain areas, it can enhance natural abilities in unexpected ways. Your temporal lobe, where we did the stimulation, is connected to empathy and social processing." "Hey, so you believe her?" Jake asked. "I believe that her brain has been altered in a way that's causing her to process social and emotional information differently. Whether that means she can literally read minds or just has extremely heightened empathy, the treatment would be similar." Kim prescribed some medication to help with the overwhelming sensory input and taught Lisa techniques for managing the constant stream of information. She also suggested that Lisa practice meditation and mindfulness to help her focus on her own thoughts rather than others. Over the following weeks, Lisa slowly began to feel more in control. The medication helped reduce the intensity of what she heard, and the meditation techniques gave her ways to create mental boundaries between herself and other people's thoughts. Jake supported her through every step of the process. When she had bad days where the voices were too loud, he would sit with her and help her focus on his thoughts instead. When she felt guilty about taking medication to reduce her ability, he reminded her that taking care of herself was more important than any special power. "You know what's funny?" Lisa said one evening as they walked through the quiet campus. "Before this happened, I thought I was pretty good at understanding people. But hearing everyone's thoughts has actually made me realize how little I really knew about human nature." "What do you mean?" "People are so much more complicated than I thought. Someone might seem confident on the outside, but inside they're terrified. Someone might act mean, but they're actually just scared of being hurt. Everyone is fighting battles that nobody else can see." Jake squeezed her hand. "That sounds exhausting." "It is. But it's also made me more compassionate. When I hear someone thinking something cruel, I can usually also hear the pain underneath it. People aren't just good or bad, they're complicated." This new understanding changed how Lisa interacted with everyone around her. She became more patient with difficult people, more understanding of others' flaws, more grateful for the genuine connections in her life. Jake noticed the change too. "You're different now," he told her one day. "More at peace with yourself." "I think I've learned that everyone has thoughts they're ashamed of," Lisa said. "Everyone struggles with being human. The difference is what we choose to do with those struggles. And what do you choose to do with yours?" Lisa smiled and took his hand. "I choose to love people anyway, including myself." As they walked back to their apartment, Jake realized that Lisa's ability had taught them both something important about love. It wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose imperfections you could accept and who could accept yours in return. The real magic wasn't that Lisa could read minds. It was that she had chosen to love Jake completely, flaws and all, and that he had learned to love himself the same way. I love you, he said suddenly. Lisa turned to him with tears in her eyes. I know, she said. I can hear it in your thoughts. Every day, and I love you too. They stood there on the empty campus path. Two imperfect people who had learned that being truly known by someone was the most beautiful gift they could give each other. 6 months later, Lisa had learned to live with her ability in a completely different way. The medication helped control the overwhelming flood of thoughts. And the meditation techniques Dr. Kim taught her allowed her to choose when to listen and when to create mental barriers. It was like learning to adjust the volume on a radio. She could tune in when she wanted to, and tune out when she needed peace. Jake watched her transformation with amazement. The scared, overwhelmed woman who had grabbed her head in pain was now confident and in control. She used her ability purposefully now, helping their research team understand emotional responses better, and even volunteering at the campus counseling center where she could sense when students were hiding deeper problems. I never thought I'd say this, Lisa told him one evening as they sat in their favorite coffee shop, but I'm grateful for what happened to me. This ability has taught me so much about people and about myself. Jake smiled. Even with all the headaches and overwhelming moments, even with all of that, because it brought me to you, and it taught me that real love means accepting someone completely, messy thoughts and all. Their relationship had evolved too. They communicated in ways that most couples never could. Lisa could sense when Jake was stressed about school before he even realized it himself. Jake had learned to be completely honest with his thoughts, knowing that hiding them from Lisa was impossible anyway, but their biggest test came when Dr. Kim presented them with an unexpected option. I've been working with some colleagues, Dr. Kim explained during one of Lisa's regular checkups. We think we've developed a procedure that could reverse the changes in your brain. It would essentially reset your neural pathways to how they were before the accident. Lisa felt her heart stop. You mean I could go back to being normal? Yes, you'd lose the enhanced empathy and mind-reading abilities. But you'd also be free from the overwhelming sensory input and the need for medication. Jake squeezed Lisa's hand. You could see the conflict in her eyes. What are the risks? Lisa asked. It's experimental, so there are unknowns. But the preliminary studies suggest it's relatively safe. The choice is entirely yours. That night, Lisa and Jake stayed up talking about the decision. Lisa sat curled up on their couch, her head on Jake's shoulder, while he played with her hair. What do you think I should do? She asked. I think you should do whatever feels right for you, Jake said. I'll love you either way. Doesn't part of you want me to go back to normal, so you can have private thoughts again? Jake was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I've gotten used to you knowing everything about me. It's scary sometimes, but it's also liberating. I don't have to worry about pretending to be someone I'm not. Lisa lifted her head to look at him. Really? Really? Besides, this ability is part of who you are now. It's shaped how you understand people and how you help them. I wouldn't want you to give up something that makes you who you are just because it makes things easier. Lisa thought about all the people she had helped over the past few months. Students who were suicidal but afraid to ask for help. Professors struggling with depression. Even her own family members who had been hiding their problems behind cheerful facades. I think I want to keep it, she said finally, because it means you'll never have privacy from me. Every thought, every feeling, every moment of doubt or insecurity, I'll know about it. Jake turned to face her fully. Lisa, you've already seen me at my worst. You've heard my most embarrassing thoughts, my deepest fears, my moments of selfishness and weakness. And you're still here? You still love me? That's more than most people get in a lifetime. Tears filled Lisa's eyes. Are you sure? I'm sure. Besides, I've learned something important from all this. The thoughts and feelings I was so ashamed of, they're just part of being human. Everyone has them. The difference is what we do with them. Lisa smiled through her tears. Dr. Rodriguez would be proud of you. She would. She's been helping me understand that self-acceptance isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest about who you are and choosing to be better. The next week, Lisa told Dr. Kim that she wanted to keep her abilities. The doctor was supportive and helped her develop even better techniques for managing the constant input of information. 3 months later, Jake made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He had been thinking about it for weeks, but he wanted to make sure his reasoning was sound. "Lisa," he said, one evening after they finished working on their research project, "I want to ask you something important." Lisa looked up from her laptop, immediately sensing the shift in his emotional state. "You're nervous about something?" "Yeah, I am." Jake pulled a small box from his backpack. "I've been thinking about this for a while, and I want to make sure I'm asking for the right reasons." Lisa's eyes widened as she recognized what the box probably contained. "I'm not asking you to marry me because you can read my mind," Jake continued. "I'm asking because you can read my mind and you still choose to love me. You've seen every part of me, the good, the bad, the embarrassing, the proud moments, the shameful ones, and you're still here." He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. "Most people spend their whole lives wondering if they're truly lovable. I don't have to wonder. I know that someone who has seen my worst thoughts and my best thoughts loves me completely." Lisa was crying now, but she was smiling too. "Jake, ... I know this isn't how most people do relationships. I know it's weird and complicated and sometimes overwhelming, but I can't imagine being with anyone else. I can't imagine going back to hiding parts of myself or wondering if I'm really loved." Lisa reached out and took his hands. "Can I tell you what I'm thinking right now? Always. I'm thinking that you're the bravest person I've ever met. Not because you're not scared, but because you're scared and you're choosing love anyway. I'm thinking that most people would run away from someone who could see their every thought, but you're running toward it." Jake slipped the ring onto her finger. "So is that a yes?" "It's a yes to all of it. To the weird, complicated, overwhelming, beautiful life we're building together." They kissed then, and Jake felt the familiar warmth of their mental connection. He could sense Lisa's joy, her love, her excitement about their future. But he could also sense her gratitude, not just for his proposal, but for his acceptance of all of her, including the parts that made their relationship different from anyone else's. As they held each other in the quiet lab where they first met, Jake realized that being truly known by someone wasn't the terrifying experience he had once thought it would be. It was actually the most freeing, most loving thing that had ever happened to him. Lisa had seen every part of him, every flaw, every strength, every moment of doubt, and every moment of growth. And she had chosen to love him anyway. That wasn't just acceptance. It was the kind of unconditional love that most people only dreamed of. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "No," she whispered back. "I can hear it in every thought you have, and I love you too." They had learned that true love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone who could see your imperfections and love you not despite them, but because of them. Because those imperfections were part of what made you human. Being human was nothing to be ashamed of. In a world where everyone wore masks and hid their true selves, Jake and Lisa had found something rare and beautiful, a love that was completely honest, completely accepting, and completely real.